Hey YouTube, welcome back to the Blades to Be shop and another project video. Today we're going to be working with some 7075 aluminum and we're going to make these small little custom drivers. If you watched my last video, I went in and I showed exactly how to design these in Fusion. So if you didn't have a chance to see that video, want to see a little bit more on the design in Fusion, you can go check that one out. But essentially what these are is I have a small stud that I have to put in on the knives that I make, and it doesn't have a screw head on it. So I need to use a little driver to do that. I'll show you that on the bench here in a little more detail in a minute before we get going. But right now I just have a current hex driver from a screwdriver. I've got some little rubber pieces in there, and I'm constantly having to pull one of the pieces of rubber out as I get those pieces in place. So I thought it was worth taking a few minutes to make some custom drivers to make that installation and make that piece a little bit better for me. So we'll jump on the computer and I'll give you a little bit more detail on this drawing. I've got a nice dimension drawing here to get us going. Again, this is all going to be manual today. Even though I did it in Fusion, this is not a CNC project today. I've got a manual Precision Matthews lathe that we're going to turn it on, and then we'll get over onto the milling machine, use the index head and cut some flutes in the outside. So should be a pretty fun project to do that. So we'll jump on the bench here real quick and I'll show you exactly what this part is going to do, what it's for, and then we'll look at the computer, take a better look at the drawing. We'll get back down here in the shop and we'll start making some chips. For those of you subscribed to the channel, hey, I sure appreciate you finding your way back to another video to watch these. If you're new to the channel, want to see more videos around machining, welding, CNC machining, fusion design, just pretty much everything else we have going on here in the Blades to Be shop, great time to hit that subscribe button. All right, let's go ahead, take a look at the bench and exactly what this part is going to do for us. Here's what we're replacing. Currently just using a hex driver, 3/16 hex driver, and I have some little pieces of rubber gasket material stacked up in the end of those, and it just works to grab this little thumb stud. I can set that in there, push it against the piece of rubber, and that sticks out just enough to make it easy to start and get threaded into this knife. After I get it threaded in there and started, I can stack another piece of rubber in there, and that gives me enough. I can push on that and I can get that more or less tight before I give it a final tighten with another tool. So right now I'm constantly taking in and out that little piece of rubber, and you know, this is kind of small to hold on to, so I thought, hey, I'm going to make a couple of custom drivers. So pretty small part that we're making, but I think it should turn out pretty nice in aluminum. Let's go take a quick look at this drawing, the dimension drawing, get a better sense of exactly what we're going to make, and then we'll come back down here on the lathe and we'll start making some chips. As I mentioned, there's a whole nother video out there, a Fusion Flicker of mine you can take a look at if you want to see exactly how I designed this in Fusion and got this put together. It really didn't take too long. I think it took me a total of 19 minutes, and that was with a few distractions. So pretty easy part to go ahead and make. So you can check out that video if you want to see more. But here is the drawing of what we're going to go down and hit up on the lathe. So not too complicated. We're going to take and turn this outside diameter. I'm going to start with some 1-inch aluminum. Turn the whole outside down. I plan to make them back to back so that I only have to mill the flutes one time. And then we're just going to turn down a smaller diameter, cut the radius in here. And really the only important part of the whole piece, the really precision part, is the depth on this hole, because that's where I need to stack in my little washers and have those come out right. So that's the most precision piece. The rest of this is just cosmetic, and that's why I wanted to come up here and build it in Fusion to make sure I knew how deep to cut those flutes, kind of get a look at what size of a land I was going to get left with in between. So once I got the look that I was going for, time to go down and make it. But here's the dimensions. If you're looking to make something similar to this, you can see what I'm working from a drawing. Let's head back down to the lathe and let's go ahead and start cutting this out. We're just going to start with some 7075 aluminum, 1-inch diameter, and should be able to do everything I need to today with the collet chuck. I made sure that I made the two outside dimensions that I'm going to hit on this. I made sure that that's going to be sizes that I have collets for. So it's going to be 5/16 and 9/16 are what we're going to hit here for those two outer dimensions. So that way I'll be able to easily grab it after we index it and cut the flutes and everything else, and be able to turn this around, machine both ends of it easily in the collet chuck. So my plan is I'm going to machine them back to back. I'll turn this whole piece down to the 9/16 diameter. We'll machine and contour and get everything set up on one end after I get that center drilled. And then I may dig out a little bit of the material over here just to know roughly where I'm going to go to. Then we'll take it over to the mill, we'll cut the flutes, we'll come back, we'll separate these and finish up the contour on the back end of it, and then finish up the other one. So let's go ahead and figure out how much I need sticking out of the chuck here. I need to make sure I'm operating with a good 3 inches of material, and I don't need to have too much extra sticking out here on the lathe. On the mill, we're going to have a little bit more sticking out. Alright, so we're going from 1 inch down to 9/16. So I'm going to quickly just pull 400 thou off of there, and then we'll measure and see how much we have left to go. Let's up that feed a little bit, see if we can't get those chips to break a little better. Still not breaking very nicely for us. Alright, let's get in there and finish that off. Alright, sometimes aluminum is just a little gummy and doesn't like to break for us. We got that roughed off. That was 200 thou cuts each, so we should be somewhere around 600 here. Yeah, we're just a couple under. And it's not too bad for temperature. Aluminum cools off nice and quickly. 597. So we've got about 34.5 thou to take off. And since I have the room at the end here, I'm just going to take a starter cut and see what that's hitting for a diameter for me. Alright, glad I checked. Just with that rough finish on there and everything else, need to take a little bit more, and I want to try to get this done in one finish cut. Alright, let's see how we did. So we're going for 562.5, and we're at 5/63 and maybe 1/10. So that is what we were looking for. So that'll definitely get back in our collet when we need to go finish that off on the outside. So now we're going to turn down 1/2 inch of this down to 5/16, and we'll kind of do some of our measuring over here and rough out this other end over here, get our contour done on this side for sure, and then we'll head over to the mill. I'll just put some marks on there so I don't confuse myself. And we'll turn this down to 5/16 right here. There's my spot where it's going to be the in between the two pieces. We'll make sure we leave enough room that we can come back and finish those off. That'll kind of be my parting section right between them there. And then the contour on the back one, and then this is the other spot that'll go down to 5/16 right there. Should have about 50 left to go. Yes, so going for 312, so I've got about 47 left to go. Kind of made a funny feed. I'm going to see if I can take a skim off of there. Alright, that is right on the money at our 312. Nice finish. Now I thought what I would do is to keep, since they're pretty much exactly the same, other than one has one piece of rubber, one has two pieces of rubber in it. So I'm just going to put one groove in the middle of this one for step one, and I'll put two grooves on the other one on the outside for step two. So I'm going to go in here, had that zeroed out at the end. I'm going to move over 1/4 inch to find the middle, and we'll see what depth looks good, and we'll just go to that depth. Just went in there 10 thou, made a little line on there. We'll make two grooves on the other one. That's great. Come in here and break the end of this a little bit. Alright, just put a couple marks on there so I can keep track of, that's where I'm going to part this off. That's where my other piece comes in, but we'll turn that around and hold that in the collet chuck to finish it after. Let's put the radius on here and we'll be ready to head over to the mill. So here's our radius tool we're going to use in there, just a brazed carbide. Not sure if it's the exact same radius as the drawing, but Again, there's nothing critical on here, so it will be close enough. Just pulled another tool out of this holder, so I'm going to check really quick, make sure that's on center. Use my tool height gauge to do that. Close, but not quite. There we go. Be set up for us for the next time. If you want to see the video on making this tool height gauge, you can check that on my channel as well. Alright, so I'm going to touch off without it running. I don't actually want to mark my part there, but I just want to know when that tool makes contact, so I'll zero my DRO out at that point. And I'm going to come over here and I'll set this on the end. Same thing, we'll get that so that I know when I am at 3/4 of an inch. Zero it back out there, and I'm just going to work my way in until I get both of those readings to 0, and I'll be able to get some consistency on the other part as well. And I'm going to slow this down just a little bit. Might get a little chattery taking that big cut when I finish. And we've got that radius cut in there. Take just a little bit of emery and just blend that together. Just see a little touch of a line. And we're also going to break that edge a little bit right there. Alright, now we've got a nice center hole in there. I'm going to leave that and we're going to come back and punch our 3/16 hole in the end of that after. Again, we're going to have a nice surface here to be able to grab in a collet chuck. So we'll come back and finish that one after. Let's head over to the mill. Let's get our flutes cut on here and then we'll come back and finish these all up in the lathe. Alright, so we've got our piece in here ready to go, and now I remember why I was going to undercut the backside in the lathe, so then I'd be able to cut across, index it, and then cut backwards and make it a little bit faster. But that's alright, we'll cut across, we'll back it out, we'll index over here. Actually, I guess I can. I think I'm still going to index it over here. That way we're just cutting both ways and not back feeding in my cut. I can keep the depth set. So I'm just going to be winding it around. We're going to direct index. I'm going to use the index plate. I've got 24 holes in this plate. We're making 8 divisions, so that's 3 holes. It's also a 40-to-1 index head, So it's exactly 5 turns of the crank to get 8 indexes on there. I'm just going to start on 0 to make sure I keep track of where I am and make sure I finish up correctly. So we're going to go over here, and the depth of cut is about 26 thou. So I'm going to put in, I got my 1/4 inch ball end mill in here. We'll touch off, we'll feed down 26 thou, and we're just going to feed over, index, feed back, index, feed over, and back and forth, and let's get our 8 flutes cut in here. One thing I forgot to do is set this up on center, so I'm just going to eyeball it on center right here off the end of my shaft. If I needed it more precisely on center, I could touch off on the side and move over that way, but for what we're doing, don't need that level of precision. All right, let's touch off there and we'll get our depth of cut set.
All right, you can really see those flutes in there now. We got all 8 flutes all the way around. We'll get back over to the lathe when we're ready to get a hole in the end of this one. We'll part them off, finish the back ends on both of them, and then we're going to get them done. Let's go ahead and head back over to the lathe.
All right, we got it back in the lathe, so we're going to put our 3/16 hole in the end of there. I'm going to use an end mill since I want that to be flat, so I'm just going to put a 3/16 2-flute end mill in my chuck, and I'll use my dial indicator on the tailstock in here to go in exactly my 155 thou deep. So we'll get that set up right now. All right, so to get my depth, I'm going to put this collar on here. I'll be able to stick my magnetic dial right on the top and be able to see exactly how far we're moving. So I've got another video out there if you want to see how I made that collar to put on there. Some people set up a DRO on their tailstock, but this worked well enough for me. I don't do it often enough where I need that precision, but for today, we do. All right, so we're going to turn that on, and I'm going to go to where I just touched. We'll set that to 0, and then I'm going to feed in there 155 thou to get that set for my depth. And just that quick. Just give that a quick deburr on the end. Alright, let's double check our depth on there. Looks like we're 157-ish. So I think for what we're looking for with our piece of rubber, that should be perfect. This is number 1, so that little extra depth will just help us out. So that should be it. So we've got number 1 complete. We're gonna get in there and part that off, and then we'll turn it around. We can grab it on the backside in the collet chuck, and we'll be able to face off the backside and round off the backside to make it look closer to our drawing. Let's get a different collet in there, and we'll finish off the first one. We'll get the other one to the same stage, and then we'll do the backsides of both of them together. So let's go ahead and get this parted. While we have that, let's go ahead and part off our other one. Well, there's our couple of parts so far. So we've got one nearly done. Just need to clean up the back side of that one and this one. Just get it back in there, machine it up, and clean off the back side. So let's change out the collet. We'll be ready to work on them. All right, now for this one, I want to put in 2 of those 10 thou deep grooves in there. So I'm going to line up on the end, and I want to go over 166 to the first one. And there we go. I got one with 1 groove, one with 2 grooves. Be able to tell those apart. Let's get our hole in the end of this one, and we'll be ready to flip them around and clean up the backsides. No center drill in this one, so it should be even easier to get us started where we need to be. There we go. We've got our 2 near identical parts, pretty much right at the exact same length right there. So let's just turn them around, and we'll take a little skim off of the backside, and we'll round that backside off. There is one done. Let's get the other one in here, finish it up. There they are. I think I'm going to go hit those on the buffer real quick. We'll see what they finish up like. All right, well, I think we made what we set out to make here. We've got a couple of little drivers. I think those look considerably better than the little hex tool I was using before. Let's get our piece of rubber in there and let's see how this is going to work. So this is step one, so this is only going to have one little piece of rubber in there. And then we should put our piece in. Nice, that's going to stick out far enough we'll be able to get that started in the hole. And it actually fits in there a little nicer now that it's not going in around a hex as well. And we'll get this one, so this is step two, so it's going to have two pieces of rubber in here. Should fill it pretty much flush to the front. And it does. And that's going to be just pushing on that. And now that I don't have four pieces of rubber, yep, you just barely can't quite even push past the whole head. So that is perfect. Well, there is project complete. Couple of little drivers. Fun little project on the lathe and using the index head. Well, YouTube, that's a wrap on another project here in the Blades to Be shop. I sure appreciate you joining me as we knocked out a couple of these little custom drivers for a little custom tooling that I needed. You know, maybe something that if you need a driver handle, screwdriver, can make these pretty much in any size. So, hey, hopefully it gave you some good ideas of something you can work on in your own shop. So as always, for those of you subscribed to the channel, I sure appreciate you watching these videos. If you're new to the channel, want to see more videos on machining, welding, CNC machining, just everything else going on here in the Blades to Be shop, great time to hit that subscribe button right now. If you've got ideas for videos, something you'd like to see from the shop, go ahead, drop those in the comments. Or hey, just any other comments or feedback on the video. Love to hear those as well. Till next time, I hope you're out in your own shop working on some projects of your own, making some chips of your own. I'll be here in the Blades to Be shop working on that next video, working on something that I hope will be of interest to you. Until I get that one out, y'all take care.